Hey guys, we're back for another fun, exciting episode of working on Gretchen the Gleaner. So anyway, I've got the rest of the separator clutch removed. So finally got that nut off. We're gonna make a new one of these. That used to be a ball bearing. Not sure what it classifies as now, probably just shrapnel. The one on the other side is slightly less destroyed. Sorry, it's up here. I gotta look at the camera, not what I'm looking at. So I've got some bearings on order for that. I've got new bearings for the shaft on order. We're going to pull this shaft out. I don't know if it will show up from this angle or not. There's a pretty good groove worn in this right here where that bearing has been running at and spinning. So I want to see if I can rework this shaft and repair that. But first we got to get it apart, and before we do that, we got to take the variable speed apart on the other side. Yay. Okay, so I'm looking at the variable speed side right now. I got the main drive belt loose. It's off the tensioner. So what I'm thinking I need to do to get this off of here, the cylinder for the variable speed is in here. I think I need to unhook that fitting, and then I think I can pull that bolt. Yeah, there's a bolt on each side, and I've got to pull both of those. And I think I can take that nut out. And I think everything out here will slide off the end of the shaft. I think. Yeah, there's another toasted bearing. So, yep, that's what we're gonna try. Darn cats. If anybody needs cats that can climb ladders, let me know. I've got several that don't do me much good. Watch my toes here. let's see about putting new bushings in there too. Okay, so now that that's off of there, now it looks like we've got three socket head bolts or Allen head bolts in there. So we'll pull those out, try to get this pulley off. So yeah, the bearings on that shaft are a bit worn too, so I'm glad we're tearing it down to do this. 58-year-old combine, we're going to find a lot of noisy bearings, so we might as well get at them now. Okay, so the bolts are out. What I'm realizing is that I'm pretty sure that there's a sort of a split tapered collar inside of here that this pulley is tight on, and I am not going to be able to get it off of that out here without applying a lot of heat, which I don't. Focus, come on, you can do it. So anyway, what I think I'm going to do, sorry again for my typical camera work, I'm going to unbolt this flange here. I'm going to wait a little bit to do that. I'm going to go around to the other side and see if I can get that bearing loose and get it unbolted, and see if I can just unbolt that flange and then pull the whole shaft out this side, and then take this over to the press where I can heat that and put some pressure on it, because I don't want to break this pulley. It's already got a chunk out of it right there, and I don't want to break it any worse than that. So yep, that's what we're going to try next. Okay, so I made myself a little puller. I'm going to attempt to pull this off. I've got these bolts out of this flange. I'm hoping that if I pull on this, it will pull everything together and pull the bearing out, or push the shaft out the other side. Is it moving, or is it just bending the plate? I think it's moving. Well, attempt number 1, bearing 1, Evan 0. Well, it's out. I lost the battle, but I won the war. So let's take it over to the shop and see what we got to do to get that pulley and hub off of there. Okay, so If this doesn't scream bad idea, I don't know what it's saying, but anyway, the shaft is too long to go in the press, so I had to put a lift kit on the press. So there is clearance between the end of the shaft and that board underneath, but the hub in that pulley is tapered, so I'm hoping that put some heat on it, that it should come loose. Oh, or it could just do that. I'd be okay with that too. Okay, so I got the pulley off, got the hub off. The hub is split on one side, so it's pretty easy. Just take a flathead screwdriver, drive it in there lengthways, and that spreads it apart, and it slides right off. So now I'm going to try to press this bearing off. I've got the locking collar off already, so hopefully this won't come off too hard. It shouldn't be, but I don't want to say that too much. Famous last words, right? Come on. Wow. I may end up having to cut this one off too. I think before we tear something up, I'm just going to get the grinder and I'm just going to cut it. Heck with it. Well, it's light enough in here. I'm going to see if I can get the bearings out of this pulley too. This press is kind of unique. It's got two different pump sides on it. One is large for moving quickly, and then the other side is standard for your pressing power. It's the only one I've ever seen like that. Kind of chilly and the oil doesn't want to flow very well. Well, there went part of a bearing. So, a quick little public service announcement, so any of you guys aren't idiots like me. Always look at your parts manual and make sure that there's not a snap ring holding that bearing in on that side. Yep. I think I can make something work here, but darn, I wish I hadn't done that. Oh well, a little late now, huh? Okay, so now we're going to start a portion of the show called Fixing My Screw-Ups. So this is the old bearing out of that side. This is the snap ring that came out of the groove that is no longer there. So how this was set up before, of course there's still a snap ring in here. This bearing, the bearing on this side was trapped between those two snap rings, and then there you have a spacer in here between the two bearings, and then the other bearing was just able to land wherever it needed to inside this bore. And then the nut on the shaft tightened up against the bearings and tightened them together. What I'm going to do differently is, or how I'm going to change this to fix it, is I'm going to cut a snap ring groove over here to back up this bearing. So instead of having a snap ring groove, or instead of having a snap ring on both sides of one bearing, I'm going to have a snap ring inside of a bearing here and inside of the other bearing that will be here. So the main thing I will have to do there is just make sure that the spacer that was in here was toast also, so we'll have to make a new spacer anyway. So I'll just have to make sure that the thickness of my spacer is right to match up with the distance between the two snap ring grooves. And then as long as I don't have my spacer too short to where it's pinching the bearings together beyond where, or tighter than where the snap ring grooves are, I won't have a binding problem there, and it should function basically the same way as it would have if I hadn't screwed it up. But that's the plan, and we're gonna bore a snap ring groove inside of here, and hopefully we'll be back in business after that. Okay, so I've got my groove cut. I've got the snap ring installed in it. I think that should work out okay. Like I said, we'll be using both bearings to trap this in place instead of just using one bearing. But I think that'll work out all right. So, okay, now we're back to where we were a couple of hours ago. Let's move on to our next disaster. Well, this is my setup for an extra long piece that's longer than the lathe. So I had made this steady rest a long time ago. It's fairly crude, but it works. Eventually I want to make a nicer one for this lathe. This is the one I made for my first Atlas lathe that my dad has now. So I had to borrow this from him. This tool is, I've always heard the name called a cat's head. I don't know why they're called that, but basically it's just a sleeve that has a machined diameter on it and 4 adjusting bolts on each end so that you can support a piece of stock in it that does not have a machined outside, because as rough as this is, I could not put this directly in my steady rest. I've got to have something else to hold it and carry it. So what I'm getting ready to do, I'm going to turn, this end is where the variable speed sheave rides and slides back and forth, and this is worn quite a bit. This should be a straight diameter, 1 inch 625, inch and 5/8. In here, this is worn down to about an inch 590. It's a little bit less bad here. I come over to the sheave itself. On this side, it's only worn out to about an inch 650. Excuse me. On this side, see how thin that is? This is worn out to an inch 780. So what my plan is for fixing this, I've got a piece of bronze bushing stock ordered. I'm going to just machine that end to wherever it will clean up. I'm going to stop about at the edge of that rust line, because that's where the big pulley rides on that tapered hub. So this is fine. This needs to stay where it is. The rest of it I'm going to turn undersized just until it cleans up. Then this I'm going to put in the mill because it's too big for the lathe. I'm going to bore this ID until I get good cleanup in there. Then we will turn the outside of our bronze piece to fit that, and then we'll finish bore it to match whatever we cut that shaft to. Since this is a very simple steady rest, it just has bronze contact pads on the end of each of these studs. So you want to make sure you've got some oil in there to lubricate everything. Eventually I want to make one that's got ball bearings in it. But I don't have an easy way right now to tell how straight this is in the lathe, so I'm going to have to take a cut and then measure, once I get it to clean up at each end, measure it at each end. I may have to adjust this a little bit to try to get it to where it will cut straight. We'll just have to try it and see. You also don't want to run real fast with that either. We were cutting good back here. It's falling off now. So we just have to see how far we have to take it and where we end up. Okay, so I made just my first little light skim pass, so you can see we're cleaned up here in the middle and out here at the very end. So right here I am measuring an inch 612, and right here I am measuring an inch 614. So we've got a little bit of taper in this. That means that the shaft is actually pulled this way slightly. It's not as bad as I expected it to be. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to I'm going to put an indicator on the shaft here and indicate on across my cleaned up surfaces. I'm going to adjust these two bottom contact points to try to get this to run where I need it. Then we'll take another pass and try to get it straight. Within 2 thousandths though is not too bad, so I'm afraid to mess with it too much because I don't want to screw it up worse, but we're going to try just a little bit. Okay, well, it finally cleaned up this last pass. I never did completely get all the taper out of it. It's still 1/1000th of an inch bigger here than it is here. But 1/1000th I can live with. I'm given this mess. I'm kind of surprised I got it that close. But anyway, we are at 1 inch 582 here, 1 inch 581 here. So we're just over 40 thousandths under what it would have been original just to get it to clean up. So, but I don't mind it being a little bit small. I didn't want to go any smaller than that because there is in this, you can kind of see that groove right there. There's an O-ring that goes in that groove so that when you grease this, that O-ring is supposed to keep the grease from being able to come out this side and get into your drive belt for the transmission. So there should still be enough squeeze on this, I think, to hold the grease back. And it's not like we're going to put thousands of hours on this thing anyway. So okay, so I'm going to go ahead while I'm still in this setup on the lathe, I'm going to go ahead and weld this up. I don't think I'm going to weld this entire stretch right here because I mean, you've got a bearing that rides here and a bearing that rides here, and then there's just a spacer between the two bearings here. So I think, and oddly enough, this is where the totally destroyed bearing was. It's only worn under about 5. Back here where the less destroyed bearing was is under about 20. So I'm going to weld where these two bearings go. I'm also going to weld a little bit on the shoulder because I think that it's worn back into the shoulder a little bit. I'm going to try to stay back away from the threads so that I don't have to try to fix the threads. And then I'm going to try to weld it slowly and just weld a pass on one side, then turn the part 180 degrees, weld on the other side, and keep rotating my way around to try to do it evenly and not just heat one side of it up. So that's the theory. Okay, so we're getting the shaft turned around to work on the other end, and unfortunately we're getting into the hold my beer category with this setup because I not only need to turn this diameter where the bearings go and reestablish that shoulder, but I also need to turn this small diameter here out at the end of the shaft, which is the end of the shaft. It's not worn that bad, but it seems to be bent because the spline is running out some, but I don't think it's running out bad enough to hurt it. This is running out 25 to 30 thousandths. So I'm going to turn this to get it straight. But what I had to do, because there's nothing to hold on to, I made a little arbor. The only hole in the end of this is the 1/8 inch pipe thread hole for the grease fitting. So I made a steel arbor with that pipe thread on it. I had a pipe die that size. So we are holding on to that. We are pushed back against the jaws this way. So I'm getting ready to start indicating the shaft in. Well, it was cutting rough enough. I mean, it was cutting, but not great, so I decided to go ahead and set the grinder up. I got my coarser wheel on here. I'm going to see how well we can knock this stock down with it. Well, I'm getting ready to dress the wheel. It's getting shiny, so it needs to cleaned up, but I've still got quite a ways to go. But it's taking the stock down. It's not fast, but it's definitely a lot less of a beating on the machine. So we'll Okay, well, it's been slow, but I've got it roughed down pretty close. I'm actually within, I think, about 5 right now of where I want to finish at. And it checked really straight after that last cut. So what I'm doing, I've changed wheels. I've got my fine wheel on, so I'm going to get it dressed. I'm going to dress a little radius on this corner, because I don't know if you can tell, you can't see it real well, but I dressed a radius on the other wheel, so I would leave a little, probably a 1/16 of an inch or so fillet in that corner. Then I will, I'm going to let this cool down. I'm going to go in and make a couple hamburgers for dinner, and yeah, let this cool down for a while, because it's not hot, but it's definitely warm. I mean, it's not so hot you can't touch it or anything. I did put an indicator on it and check it. It's still running pretty good, so I'm not going to mess with it. For what this is, it was running, both diameters here were within 1, and they were right there with each other. This end was running out, I think, 2 or 3 for what this shaft, for what that is, and for that distance, that's pretty darn good. So I'm not going to fight with it. So I will let this cool down for a while, and we'll be back later. Well, I'm calling this diameter finished. I measured at this end. I'm at 1'377". Back to there. I'm at 1'377". So the ID of my bearings, they did not come in the mail today, but the spec says that the ID is 1'378". So that should give me 1,000 slip fit onto there. The nut should tighten down against the shoulder, or should tighten everything down against the shoulder once we get the spacer in there. So it should be good. I did rework this shoulder and then touched up here, so what little bit of weld was sticking up. I have not done anything with this diameter yet. I'm going to, but I'm not going to do it tonight, and this video is going to be a marathon already, so I apologize that it's going to end up being so long, but this was a project. So anyway, if you survived this long and you're still here and still watching, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching, and hope you all have a good one. There's plenty more machining where this came from, so yeah, if you're into that, come back next time. Thanks again. Bye.